As we approach the quote-unquote fast etude for this year, the Allegretto by Böhme, let's begin by defining our terms. Our tempo marking is Allegretto, which might be more literally defined as a little allegro, meaning that it is usually a little slower than allegro. In my experience, this term also implies a certain lightness, which is reinforced by the marking we see underneath the line there, légère. This is the French equivalent of the Italian term leggero, which means that the etude should be played lightly or delicately. Secondly, our tempo. The instructions indicate that this should be played with the quarter note at 88 to 96 beats per minute. While I would not recommend going faster than 96, you might find that once you find a groove on this one, the faster end of the indicated tempo range might be even more comfortable for you than the slower end. Number 3, practice this etude slowly and quickly. I recommend practicing at half tempo, then 75% of tempo, then at tempo, then at 125% of tempo, and then at tempo again. Practicing slowly helps you to get the notes initially and play them in tune. And then you work up gradually by steps to the written tempo. And then by trying to go a little bit faster than that tempo, what you're going to do is make your technique just that much more solid, and then that will make the actual tempo feel much more comfortable, because instead of reaching up to that written tempo, you reach past it and then settle in to the actual tempo, and you'll find it to be a lot easier for you to play. Number 4. For the most part, the longer notes in each bar should receive the emphasis, not the shorter ones. Low brass players tend to tongue fast-moving notes too hard and give them too much weight. This causes things to slow down and is musically unsatisfying as well. Happily, for the most part in this etude, the longer notes of each bar are also the downbeats, and so you have the weight that happens on the actual beat, and then you have the weight that comes from the note being longer, and so it does become a little bit more difficult to make your interpretation backwards in this way. Fifth, although the dynamic markings in this etude are sparse, allow your dynamic levels to follow the contour and the direction of the musical lines. Often in an audition, students will make an effort to play quote-unquote musically with the slower etude, but then with the faster, more technically challenging one, they focus mainly on notes and rhythms, maybe articulation, maybe even marked dynamic levels, but make no real effort to have a sense of direction, a sense of line. Therefore, if you will do this, even in the faster etude, it will set you apart from your competitors in the audition. Now, we certainly don't want to overdo this. You could create wide swings and dynamics, getting much louder as you ascend to the climax of the phrase, and then getting much softer as the phrase moves to its resolution. You don't want to do this too much. You'll sound just kind of weird and make the listener kind of seasick, to be honest. But if you'll make just a slight push, a slight increase in dynamic level as you move through the phrase to its climax, and then a slight decrease as you move to the conclusion of that phrase, just a little shape to it, a little effort at musicality, you'll find that the resulting sound is much more pleasing, and therefore your score in the audition for that etude that much higher. Number 6, ignore the staccato markings. If you're playing at the indicated tempo, simply tonguing the 16th notes cleanly will make them short enough. Thinking staccato will probably make you tongue too hard and or clip the notes. A famous trombone player once said, "Playing the trombone is easy, you just tongue and blow." And that's all you really need to do here. Articulate, play the right notes and rhythms. Don't worry about trying to play short. It's fast enough you have fast enough rhythmic patterns, it'll be short enough on its own. Seventhly, plan and mark your breaths. I've already covered this concept at length in my discussion of the slower etudes for this year, so I won't repeat it here. But I will add to that for this etude you need to make sure that you take your initial breath for a full beat in tempo. In other words, your breath is going to begin on the and of one, as it were, in an imagined complete pickup bar. This will yield a much better result than starting with a gasp of only an eighth note's length before playing the first two notes. Number 8. Do not be afraid to modify the tempo occasionally in order to create better places to breathe. If you do this well, it will sound like a musical decision. You're going to slow down a little to create some interest at the ends of phrases. It's going to sound like a musical decision when in fact it was a technical decision. You're slowing down at the end of the phrase to make the breath bigger before the next phrase. And this is true of almost every piece of music. The most musically satisfying way to interpret that piece is also the technically easiest way. So a few of these phrases can have a slight retard at the end. It sounds musical, it sounds exciting, it creates anticipation of the next phrase, and it gives you a bigger spot to breathe. You kind of get the best of both worlds, better musicality and better, easier technical execution. Also, don't be afraid to leave out one of the 16th notes toward the very end so that you can get another quick breath and finish strongly. This etude toward the end gets very difficult to push all the way through to the very conclusion. And if you choose carefully, if you choose wisely, you can leave out one of those 16th notes, get another quick breath just to help push you through to the very end, and you'll sound better at the end. And honestly, I doubt that the judges would really even notice that that note was left out. And if they did, they would still prefer that to ending with a wimpy sound because you're running out of air. Ninth, the key of concert B-flat minor. While the key signature here is 5 flats, or 3 flats in the treble clef version, the key is not concert D-flat major, but rather concert B-flat minor. While mastery of the concert D-flat major scale will help with this etude, mastering concert B-flat minor will help you even more. The Level 2 scale and arpeggio routines found elsewhere on my website include an exercise in every key which introduces minor scales in relation to the major scales with the same key signatures. You might find those exercises or similar exercises found elsewhere to be helpful. Finally, practice the key of concert F major as well, as the 8-bar phrase in measures 9 through 16 uses lots of accidentals to effect a modulation to that key. If you can think in the key of F, or in the key of G for treble clef players, for that section, instead of trying to remember all the accidentals individually, you might find your life to be quite a bit simpler in that passage.